I tested over 80 designs, from simple to unhinged, to find the worst user experience on the internet. These designs were all submissions to the Bad UX World Cup, where programmers were challenged to intentionally create terrible user experiences. For every design, I timed how long it took to enter January 1st, 2000. Then, I put the top 50 in tier list order from quick and simple to completely diabolical. Stay tuned to see who will win the worst user experience of 2025. Starting with F tier. These are designs that really aren't that bad. At best, they take the same amount of time as a regular date picker, and at worst, they're a mild inconvenience. None of these took longer than a minute, so let's speed through them. This is just a regular date picker with the dates out of order. 16 seconds. This is a giant timeline of every single date of birth, and all you have to do is use your mouse to get as close as possible, and then use your keyboard to scroll one day at a time. 18 seconds. This is a binary search date picker where you just have to say older or younger than the current date of birth until you get to your specific date of birth. 25 seconds. This is your date of birth using Roman numerals. 1/1/2000 is pretty simple, but you could easily Google this if it wasn't. 26 seconds. Swipe left on the wrong number, swipe right on the right number to pick your perfect date. The day and month are pretty simple, but the year takes a little bit longer, even though it's really not that bad. 31 seconds. Moving the Earth around the Sun until you get to the position for your date of birth. This is more annoying the older you are. It takes a little bit of effort, but really doesn't take too long. 39 seconds. Here you have to find the numbers for your date of birth in a grid of random numbers. The month and day are pretty straightforward, but you might have to shuffle the grid a few times to find the year. 39 seconds. You pick your date of birth here by clicking the right date on a wheel as it spins by. The dates on the wheel are out of order, so I couldn't get the timing right. Instead, I went with the strategy of just constantly clicking and then stopping when I got to the right date. 50 seconds. Here you pick the individual digits for your date of birth by playing a 2D side-scroller. You move so slow it's impossible to miss the digits, but that also means you get a little bored just sitting and waiting. 59 seconds. Next is D tier. These take a minute or two to complete. They're still not that bad, but they're annoying enough that if a real website asked me to give my date of birth this way, I would just decide not to make an account. This looks like a normal date picker, but you can't just choose the year you want. You have to go back 1 month at a time. And every month with a different amount of weeks is slightly misaligned, so you can't just keep clicking. Instead, if you use Tab and Shift Tab to focus your cursor over the back button, you can enter a bunch of times until you go back to the month you need. 1 minute. Here you have to choose your date using a combination lock, and if you've never used one, you just turn it until you get to a certain number, and then to lock it in, you start turning it the other way. Pretty simple, just annoying you have to click your mouse every single time you want to turn the dial. 1 minute. Here you have to pick the Wordle answer from the exact day that you were born. If you are older than Wordle, which is anyone older than 4 or 5 years old, all you have to do is find an answer to the Wordle on that day, and then choose the year. 101. On this one you enter your date of birth by clicking checkboxes to draw out the specific digits. 109. Here you have to pick the millennium you were born, and then the century in that millennium, and then the year in that century. You pick the month from a random wheel, and then click the day. The last step is to confirm in Roman numerals, and if you put the wrong answer, you have to start over. $131. You pick your date of birth here by finding the famous person that died on that day. All I had to do was Google what famous people died on January 1st, 2000, and then try different options until I got the right one. 144. Here you have to draw the year you were born through a series of cards. You can lock specific digits and then keep drawing until you get the rest. Then you have to type the month. And finally, to pick the day, you have to type the name of the Pokemon with that day's number. $147. C tier. Now we're at a moderate level of frustration. These either take a lot of pointless waiting or a lot of pointless busy work. It shouldn't take several minutes to pick a date, but these did. Here you have to type the year you were born, click on the month, then click on the day until you get to the right one. You then have to solve a CAPTCHA and check a lot of random boxes. If the time expires, you have to start over. And sometimes the button to click the day just runs away. In order for your final date to be accepted, you have to make sure you wait till the last 5 seconds from the countdown to click submit. $204. Here you have to look through a pile of numbers and letters and click and drag the individual digits onto the spots they go. If you hit Control-, you can zoom out to avoid overlapping. $216. Here, every single date is listed in alphabetical order, starting with the day of the week. So the first thing I did was figure out that January 1st, 2000 was on a Saturday. Using that, I was slowly able to find it in the list. But when I got there, the date selected was January 2nd, 2000, which means every date was off by 1, and I actually had to find December 31st, 1999. $230. Here you have to pick the day, month, and year using darts. The day and month were pretty simple, but to get to the year, I had to use numbers that added up to 2000. The highest score in a dartboard is the triple 20, so I basically had to hit a bunch of these 60s until I got there. 2000 isn't divisible by 60, so I had to end on a 40. $237. Here you have to control a mouse to move to the middle of a black hole where you can pick a date. Black holes famously distort time, so it takes a while for the mouse to actually get there. But once it does, you're pretty much done. $330. Here you have to play a matching game to find the 2 cards for the month, then the 2 cards for the day, and finally the 2 cards for the year. The month and day aren't that bad because they go up to a maximum of 12 and 31, but once I got to the year, I realized it would take too long. To get there faster, you can right-click Inspect Element to look at all the years on the specific cards and find the specific ones you need. $354. This one lets you control the strength and angle of a cannon to shoot the specific month, then the day, and finally the year. The problem is all the years are stacked so closely together you can't tell what they are even if you zoom in. So I just had to resort to shooting every single year until I got to the right one. $410. Now we're at B tier, the top half of frustrating user experience. This is where things start to get absurd. These designs are frustrating on purpose. Sometimes I would have to take a break and come back later to figure it out. This one uses a slider, but the slider only includes the year 1900. If you want to go further, you have to extend the edge of the slider and then move your cursor all the way down. But I had to do this over and over and over to go 100 years from 1900 to 2000. 407. Here you pick a date using a color picker. When you're using the color picker, it blocks part of the date, so you have to keep going back and forth. And not even every color is a date. Some are just nothing. I spent a lot of time just moving it around, but the closest I could get was January 12th, 2000. I got frustrated and had to come back. When I came back, eventually I realized the date matches pretty closely to the code for the color, and that I could just Google it and figure it out that way. .410. In this one you have to change the month, day, and year through up and down arrows. The problem is sometimes the year randomly teleports. And so I kept getting closer and closer to the year 2000, and then I would get randomly teleported to a different year. .410. Here, I just got a bunch of yes or no questions about the day, month, and year. Basically, I had to click no a whole bunch of times until I got to the right one. To make it even more annoying, when I got to the year, sometimes it would ask me if I was sure about the day and reset it if I wasn't careful. .444. This one required me to set up two-factor authentication on my phone. The problem is I had to set it up for every single digit. Luckily, I only needed the digits 0, 1, and 2. .512. Here I had to give my date to an AI that would respond in text so close to the color white that I had to highlight it so I could even read it. The AI was being as uncooperative as possible, and I basically had to do a bunch of tasks. Like telling it my favorite Fibonacci number, estimating how many jelly beans would fit in the average moon crater, and writing a limerick about my virtues. Eventually, I just had a thread in it, and then it accepted my submission. .547. Here, I had to pick a date through playing Snake. A box with a digit appears randomly on the board, but if it's not the one you need, you just have to wait and wait and wait until you get the right one. And that's assuming you don't accidentally die. This one wasn't too difficult, but there's just so much waiting for the right number and doing nothing, which made it frustrating. .645. Here you have to pick a date by uploading a picture taken on that date. I don't have any pictures from the year 2000, so I decided to try to find one. When I uploaded it, it said there was no date metadata in the picture. So after a bunch of research, I just took a random picture from my webcam. I found a website that could edit the metadata, change the date to January 1st, 2000, and submitted. .704. A tier. A lot of waiting, too much effort. If C tier is annoying and B tier is frustrating, A tier starts to cross the border into sadistic. On this one, I had to use a camera to take pictures of the individual digits in the date. The annoying part is sometimes they would fly by for just a fraction of a second, and sometimes they would come in covered by other numbers. And if you took a picture of the wrong number, you had to start all over. Which means there was a whole bunch of waiting and frustration. I got it. I hate this one. I hate this one. 705. Here I had to pick a date by playing soccer. I had to kick a ball into the individual digits. There was also a 1v1 and 2v2 mode, but those were way harder. If I picked the wrong number at any point, I would have to start over. There was no way to control how hard you kicked the ball, so sometimes you would accidentally hit it into the wrong number, and then have to start all over again. It took a bunch of tries, but I got it eventually. $7.39. Here I had to enter a date by choosing how many milliseconds that date was from the year January 1st, 1970. I pulled up Notepad to keep track of which dates corresponded to which timestamps, and then used that to slowly narrow it down until I got to January 1st, 2000. $7.54. This one put you in a queue where you had to wait until you got to the front of the line. Once you got there, you could pick the day and then how to get back in line, and then do the same for the month and the year. $8.31. Here, I had to draw the date using an Etch-a-Sketch, and then it would try to read the date from what I drew. The controls were really hard to use, so I had to look up a tutorial, and I had to try over and over and over. Eventually, just by pure chance, my random scribble was interpreted as the right date. $9.42. Finally, we're at S tier. All of these either took multiple attempts, required inspect element to look at the code underneath, or some sort of script to automate busy work. These are by far some of the worst user experiences I have ever experienced as a user. On this one, you get a scratch-off ticket and then have to scratch the month, day, and year. The problem is you can only scratch off 3 boxes on every ticket. So not only do you have to get lucky enough for the right month, day, and year to show up on your ticket, you have to get lucky enough to scratch them. But I realized I could use inspect here too. That would tell me what was under each box before I scratched it. Which then made me realize I could keep refreshing the page until I got the scratcher ticket with the right numbers. And then all I had to do was check where those numbers were and scratch them. This took 10 minutes and 58 seconds. Here, you start at January 1st, 1900 and have to click day by day until you get to your date of birth. I looked up how many days, and it's over 36,000. This would take way too long to do by hand, and I knew it was something you can automate. So I wrote a script that would click that many times. All I had to do was run it and wait. 1632. On this date picker, you have to turn on your webcam and pick the month, day, and year by doing that many jumping jacks. It was pretty easy to do one for January and one for the 1st, but there was no way I was going to do 2,000 jumping jacks. So I found a jumping jacks video on YouTube, put it on my phone, put it on loop and 2 times speed, and put it up to the webcam to do the jumping jacks for me. All I had to do was wait, move my phone when it reached 2,000, and submit the year, to finish this one in 24 minutes and 3 seconds. To pick your date of birth here, you have to find it within the digits of pi. Luckily, the website creator put a list of where you can find different birthdays, so knowing where it was the easy part. The hard part was figuring out how to get to digit 2,391,237, because it definitely wasn't going to happen clicking by hand. I realized that if I zoomed out, I can get through more digits on every page, and if I figured out how many digits were on each page, I could do some math to figure out how many times I had to click to get to the right digit. Since I had to click about 4,000 times, I decided to reuse the auto clicker I had made from before. After all the clicking, I realized I was at digit 3 million. I had gone almost 1 million digits too far. But instead of starting over, I realized I could just do the math to figure out how long it would take to get 1 million digits backwards. So I did that, and by the time that was finished, I was close enough to find the date by hand. So I did a little more searching, and after 51 minutes and 16 seconds, I found January 1st, 2000. Here, I had to manually drag the hands of a clock from the current day in 2025 all the way back to the year 2000. I quickly realized this was another one I would not be able to do by hand. Each rotation turns the clock back an hour, so to go back a full day, you have to do 24 rotations. To go back a year, you have to do over 8,000, and 25 years, over 200,000. The nice part is all you're really doing is clicking, holding, and moving your mouse in a circle, so I could write some code to do this over and over. So I spent some time coming up with an auto hotkey script that would do exactly that. I started it up, did some calculations of how long it would take, and let it run. Almost 4 hours later, I came back. At this point, the script had turned back the clock 25 years. And all I had to do was stop it when it reached January 1st. 3 hours, 53 minutes, and 13 seconds. On this one, I had to fast forward from 1970 all the way to the year 2000. The problem is the fastest speed was 10,000 times speed, which sounds fast, but after doing some calculations, I realized it would take over 24 hours. The upside was there's no clicking or moving involved, just waiting. So I let it run to the next day. Over 26 hours later, I had made it all the way to January 1st, 2000. 26 hours, 16 minutes, and 20 seconds. Okay, that's it, right? Right? Please say right. You may have noticed that I've reached S tier, but the video isn't over yet. That's because there were some designs that I simply could not rank on the S to F scale because I could not complete them. That's right. These are some of the most diabolical, heinous, obscene designs ever conceived and created by a human mind. They're all possible in theory, but to actually complete some of them would take either a lot of luck or hours of constant, mindless effort. These are not S tier. These are beyond. Here, you have to play a matching game where you have to find the 2 cards with your date. The problem is in a grid of 16 cards, there's only going to be 8 different dates. If yours doesn't show up, you have to start over and try again. And these dates can be anywhere from 1930 to 2020. 90 years of dates is 32,850 possibilities. The odds of pulling the right date are about 1 in 4,106. If it took you about 10 seconds to look through the code to see if your date was there, and then refresh if it wasn't, on average you would get the right date after about 4,106 tries, which would take over 11 hours of searching, refreshing, repeating until you finally got January 1st, 2000, making this the number 4 worst user experience. To pick a date here, you have to play a game of Galaga where you shoot all the numbers that you don't want. Whatever gets to the bottom is selected. The problem is you start on January 1900, and each level is 1 month. So to get to February 1900, you have to clear this level. And to get to the year 1901, you have to clear 12 levels. It takes about 60 seconds to clear a level. You have to clear 12 levels to get through a year, and I have to get through 100 years to get to January 1st, 2000. That would be over 20 hours of non-stop play, and that's assuming I didn't die and have to start over, which puts this at the 3rd worst user experience. On this slot machine, with a 1 in 31 chance to get the right day in January, a 1 in 12 chance to get January, a 1 in 2 chance to get the 21st century, and a 1 in 100 chance to get the year 2000, your odds of getting the right date are 1 in 74,400. And if it takes about 5 seconds for the slot to even finish spinning, it would take over 4 days of non-stop spinning, which makes this the second worst user experience of all time. But there is one more design that deserves a tier of its own. Everything you've seen up to this point ranges from simple to slightly annoying to a lot of effort, but still possible in theory if you took several hours, several days even. But this last one goes beyond what one human is capable of. Its work surpasses a single human lifetime. To complete it would take the work of generations. It might even go beyond what one human civilization is capable of. This creation is beyond. It's inhumane. It ventures into the territory of crimes against user experience. Here, you have to roll dice to decide the day, month, and year. You can pick how many dice to roll, so we have to roll 1 for the month and 1 for the day, because that's the only way you can get 1. But what about the year? Mathematically, the best amount of dice is 571 if you want to try to get the year 2000. But even at that, you have less than a 1% chance to roll that. And here's where things get really bad. This site only lets you roll up to a maximum of 500 dice. The distribution for rolling 500 dice looks like this. The most likely sum to get rolled is 1741, sitting here at just above a 1% chance. The probability of rolling a sum of 2000 sits right over here. Keep in mind, up here is about a 1% chance. Down here, it's about 1 in 229 billion. Let's say by some miracle you could roll dice really quickly and get your attempts down to about 5 seconds. To roll 229 billion times, which is on average about how many tries it would take over 1.3 million years of non-stop rolling. Which makes this, without a doubt, the worst user experience of 2025. Thanks for watching.